Okay, if you're watching this video, you're obviously putting in a one-way retractable fly screen. First thing you do is you put the bottom track on with the two corner brackets on both sides. Do the same up the very top, and you might put a couple of screws at the top. Not really necessary, it's really just to tack it in place, but maybe one or two screws depending how big it is, but the sticky tape should hold it while you build the rest of it. Whether you're left or right, put the very first side rail on. Do not put the second one on, that's one of the last things we're going to do. Next step is to assemble your pleat. So what you need to do is click the pleat into the handlebar and make sure the string comes through the top and bottom rollers. These just push in, and then you just make sure your string comes through, and you should be able to pull on it, and it's got a little bit of spring in it. If it's got no spring in it, it means that you've trapped this spring here, you've trapped one of the cords. Usually it's in along here, but if it's got spring on it, top and bottom, you're on a roll. Make sure when you put your top and bottom rollers on that there's a magnet on there. Now we do that for you, but sometimes better safe than sorry to check it. At the very top, make sure before you put your top roller bracket in, you put your tension and holder in. What that does is stops the bar coming out of the track. It actually goes into the top plate, and I'll cover that off a bit later. So again, don't worry about string length for now. We're going to cover that in a minute. I'm going to make sure that it's got a little bit of bounce in it, which it does, and I'm ready for the next step. Okay, now the next step, I've now fed my handlebar and pleat into the top and bottom track. I haven't clicked it in yet, making sure the springs are towards the back. So I've got the strings towards the front and the springs towards the back. Again, very important. And all you got to do is push that in and try and start at the bottom so it's as low down as you can possibly get it. So I'm down the bottom here. You'll see there's a section in here where you can push it into. There's a little step part on the inside. You just click it in, so all the way up to the top. Okay, now that I've done that, you can see I've pushed it all the way in, so it's just gone in as far as it'll go. It clicks, so I know I've clicked it in properly. I now want to push the pleat all the way to the back, and using the strings, now bottom controls top, top controls bottom. I want to make sure my pleat is all the way nice and tight like that. So when I pull the bottom strings, the top goes nice and tight. When I pull the top strings, the bottom goes nice and tight. If you don't do that, tensioning's a nightmare. So just make sure that you push the pleat, push it back, pull the strings so it's nice and tight. Now, down the bottom, because we cut the pleat from the top down, you might end up with one or two loose strings. Don't worry, cut them off. You don't need them, they don't do anything. Next step is both on top and on the bottom, make sure all your strings are the same length, and you do that just by pulling them through this little block. So let's do that, and once you've done that, I'm going to show you how we do the tensioning as a bit of a treat, a bit of a cheat. Okay, so I've now made sure my bottom string is the same length, and it's not no twists or anything. Now, okay, so now I'm going to make sure that my strings, just make sure it's nice and tight, again checking that I've got it tight, are pulled so it sits level with the very edge of this piece here. So I'm going to make sure my tension sits right there. My strings are nice and tight, and then I'm going to drop it into that little block. But as long as it's nice and tight to here, but not too tight, you don't want it sort of struggling, because that's going to affect how hard it is to pull it across. So I'm going to set the tension so it's right there. Then I'm going to wrap it around a couple of times, and I'm going to drop it, this top screw into there. So I'm going to do that and then show you that. So as you can see, I've just wrapped the string around a couple of times. And now there's only one way it'll go in. I'm now going to tuck it into there with the screw side facing up. Okay, as you can see now I've done that, and I've poked it down into the bottom of the bracket, and you should be able to see the top of the screw. And now I'm going to do the same up the top. So I'm going to make sure all my strings, there's no tangled strings. So in this case I've got one, so I'm just going to pull them all one by one until I figure out which one is loose. I'm going to make sure my pleat is pushed all the way to the back, because if I don't do that, yet again, I'm going to have problems with my tensioning. So I'm going to do that in a second. You can go back and once you've done this the first time, if it's got a bit of a lean on it, if it's leaning at the top, you need to loosen the bottom. If it's leaning at the bottom, you need to loosen the top. Remember, bottom controls top, top controls. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to tension it so my block sits right there on the edge, and then I'm going to drop it into there after I've wrapped it around a couple of times. Okay, so now I've got both top and bottom tension. My pleat is pushed all the way to the back at the top and the bottom. I've got my blocks in. Now I'm going to pull it across, how easy it should glide. I'm going to check that the bar now is lined up at top and bottom. As you can see, it clearly does. I'm now going to separate all my pleats to make sure they're all nice and separated. And I'm going to push it all the way back. And now I can finish. I can now put the last handlebar in, which is this piece here. Clicks into there, keeping the strings on the outside, because what we're going to do is before we put the magnet holder in, which we'll cover in a minute, we're going to hide the strings inside this track. Okay, so now I've got my final receiving channel in. On the bottom, what I like to do, instead of cutting the string really short, we tend to put a screw in here so I can wrap the string around it to hold it up, so it holds it and hides it away. That way, if I need to access it later and retension it, I've got plenty of string to be able to do that. You're going to put a couple of screws in there. I'm not going to do this for the sample one, so I've got to keep pulling it apart and show people how to do it. But now you put a couple of screws in there. Once you've done that and you've hidden your strings, check your magnet is north and south. The only way to do that is to click it on, see how it's not sticking. So I flip it round, and now it's sticking. So once you've done that, you can now put that inside the finishing rail and click it in, and you're finished. That's simple. If you need to, you can put some silicone spray on the bottom into the rollers to make it slide better. This one's got a gap because I haven't clicked it in properly yet. But yeah, that's basically, as you can see. Okay, so the very final piece of the puzzle, push your top roller in place to stop the handlebar from moving. Push that up and just tighten your little screw into there. You only have one of those per handlebar. And down the bottom you've got these little blocks, and they just tuck inside a little gap in there on both sides. You can just see if you can make it out, so there's a hole there. All right, just tuck the block inside that hole on both sides, and that stops it coming out from side to side, and then you're done.